Thank you for your attention. First of all, I would like to say a few words about our sponsors, because we are very thankful to Smith's dedication for sponsoring morning refreshment and coffee break. Thankful to GETS Crimes Logic for sponsoring the lunch. CISPA for providing continuous refreshments during the tech talks. And I also would like to say to express my deep gratitude to everyone because we heard a lot of such an amazing feedback about conference, about organization, about Baku. So we're really grateful. We hope that you enjoy your time. And now we are moved to session 3. So smart airports for seamless travel. This session will investigate if customs and border agencies are keeping up with the latest technological changes and making full use of biometrics, robotics, and other technological developments that can speed up the movement of passengers at airports. So before introducing my adorable Miss Milena Budimirovic, I have forgotten to say a few words about city tour, which I should mention, that as you know, if you don't get registered, still you can do it, approach to a dedicated desk in the registration area, because there are a limited number that can take part in this tour. And by the way, tomorrow at 16 o'clock, bus will take all of you from Boulevard Hotel. So, and what about dress code? So it is smart, casual, of course. And now I would like to introduce Ms. Milena, who will be moderating this session. Ms. Milena Budimirovic is currently the acting deputy director in the Procedures and Facilitating Sub-Directorate of the World Customs Organization. Her responsibilities cover work related to a WTO trade facilitation agreement, including managing the WCO working group of TFA and WTO. She also managed the WCO Permanent Technical Committee and is involved development of trade facilitation, so instruments and tools. Her portfolio also includes working on the WCO Future of Customs agenda. So, Ms. Milena, the stage is yours. Good luck.
Thank you very much, Said, and welcome back to the plenary. We're moving to the last session for this day, and I hope you're not too cold in this room, as I am, but I guess that will keep us awake and interested in the session. So we're moving to the last one for today. It's the Smart Airports for Seamless Travel. And I would like to just give a little bit of an introduction as to why we chose this topic. So I have to say that in the WCO, most of our work is focused on the movement of goods across borders. And when it comes to passenger goods and luggage, that is maybe a very small portion of the goods moving across borders. However, the amount of threats that are out there with those movements is still the same. So we cannot say that because of the smaller amounts of goods, we have smaller threats. And I think some of the examples there are, for example, the shoe bomb plot from 2001, which you might remember, after which most of the airports, or many of the airports around the world, have introduced scanners. You also might remember the liquid plot from 2006, after which and since when we are using very limited amounts of, you know that you can only put 100 milliliters of liquids when going onto the plane. So there are many threats that are out there and that are increasing with the movement of travelers. So apart from that, the WCO has devoted, and the Secretary General has talked about it yesterday, devoted the topic of the year 2019 to smart borders for seamless trade, travel, and transport. And this conference is also very much, and the theme of the conference is connected to this as well. So travel is one thing that we want to also cover, and this is one session that we have decided to do that in. So with that, I would just like to say that we have a very interesting group of speakers here. We have 3 representatives of customs administrations. We have a representative of one of the vendors, and lastly, we have a representative of international organizations. So maybe I could give a little bit more of information in that respect. So on my left-hand side is first Felipe Mendes, Moraes. He's a fiscal auditor in the Brazilian Federal Revenue Service, and he's been working as a chief of export division in Brazilian customs. He was also responsible for the coordination of all IT systems that provide support to the national passenger activity, API PNR data, and passenger risk assessment for land, air, and maritime borders. So definitely someone who is very much has a thing or two to say in this session. Further to the left is Falah Alsammak. He's a senior manager at Airport Terminal 2, Dubai Customs, UAE. And he has 20 years of customs experience and has assumed a number of managerial positions in Dubai Customs in the UAE before that. David Coyles, he's very much well known to the Brussels-based people. So he is he's a Counsellor of Customs in the Embassy of Australia in Brussels. And he has performed a number of border-related roles in the overseas environment, including in Indonesia, in PNG, and within the Pacific. He has a part of the team responsible for establishing offshore biometrics collection to support Australia's visa processing function. Then we have Timothy Norton, Global Market Director, Ports and Borders from Smiths Detection. He directs worldwide market strategy development for Smiths Ports and Borders Market. He's focused on customers' journey for both inspection devices as well as the growing digital transformation and operational efficiencies. And last but not least, we have Vladimir Gjorgjiev. He's the Chief of Mission, International Organization for Migration, Azerbaijan, appointed in February this year, and before that he worked in Amman, Nairobi, and in Skopje. He is specialized in procurement policy, processes and systems, operations, transport, freight logistics, and other areas. And I think it's a very interesting mix of speakers. We have 3 customs administrations, as I said, one of which has integrated to both the customs and the immigration role, so Australia, so we'll have a different perspectives also when it comes to customs administrations, one vendor and international organization, which I think at this moment is very, very pertinent, bearing in mind the issues that we have at this moment and in the last few years with migration. So I would like to now just give a little bit of or a few pieces of information before I move to the questions to the speakers. We will have 2 rounds of questions from my side, after which I would like to open up for questions from the floor. And in that respect, I would like to encourage you to use the conference app. So you have an opportunity through the conference app to send a question to me personally, and I will have a look and can read it from here. Or you can, of course, ask questions from the floor. So one thing that I wanted to mention at the very beginning is what Gareth already mentioned in session 2, and still the thunder. So he basically indicated that according to IATA, in 2016 we had 3.8 billion air travelers, and the estimation of IATA is that that number will duplicate by 2035. Now, to address his question of environmental issues, I do hope, and I think we are progressing maybe in that respect, that by that time there will be more environmentally friendly sources of energy for moving, I would say, flights across the globe. So the amount of travelers will increase tremendously. On the other hand, large airports, and sometimes we call them smart airports, are using smart solutions, technology of all sorts to improve the customer service and to ensure that things are done and movements are being performed of travelers very smoothly within the airports. And the questions that we want to look into is how does and what is the role of customs and other stakeholders at the airports in terms of making that happen. So, as I said, on one hand we have some of the stakeholders, the airport authorities that are investing a lot of effort and resources into these facilitation of travelers. But how are we able, as customs officers, to address that same issue? So with that introduction, I would like to move first to David to ask you to tell us a little bit more, and I already kind of indicated that at the very start. There is customs administrations around the world, they don't necessarily all perform the same functions, and definitely not in the same way. But for instance, we know that a small number, and it might be growing, of administrations do have both the customs and immigration role integrated, and Australia is one of them. So maybe you can give us a little bit of put this into a certain context and give us a little bit more information. How does the Australian Border Force interact with other agencies and stakeholders at the airports?
Thank you, Melania, and thanks for the opportunity for being here as part of such a distinguished panel, and a very quick thank you to Azerbaijan for hosting this particular event. Just capturing something that you said in your introductions there about goods and also the traveller stream as well. And it's a point that I've made at the WCO previously. It may resonate with some people, but ultimately goods and boxes don't do bad things. It's the people that sit behind that do the bad things and use goods and parcels and boxes to bad effect. And I guess that there is a good connection point between the traveller stream and the goods stream, because inherently they go hand in hand. Just in terms of the journey in Australia, I'll probably go back a few years to 2014. And at that time, our government instigated a review into border agencies, and ultimately they came to the recommendation that we needed to create some new entities to be able to effectively manage the border, not only for the present but into the future. And we established a Department of Immigration and Border Protection, and we established the Australian Border Force at that particular time. And it was very much reflecting on issues associated with passenger volumes, resourcing, and an increasing need to have better collaboration from a whole of government perspective. So the department itself was looking at the policy aspects of managing the border and also the enabling aspects, where the Australian Border Force was looking at the frontline operations. So for those that aren't familiar, the Australian Border Force is Australia's customs service, and we very much have a law enforcement posture around our particular operations. It was established in July 2015, and it really came down to a very simple vision, which was to protect Australia's border and enable legitimate trade and travel. So the way that we look at it is that any interaction with the border is done through the department and or the Australian Border Force. Following on from that, in July 2017, the government instigated another review, and the findings of that resulted in establishing what we call as our Department of Home Affairs. And that's an affiliation of law enforcement and security agencies from Australia. And it includes things like our Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission, AUSTRAC, which looks at financial transactions, our intelligence organisation, the Australian Border Force and the Australian Federal Police, all wrapped up in one portfolio and one department. And we sort of saw that as a natural evolution of the 2014 review in terms of sort of looking at our border as a strategic asset and positioning our agencies that have anything to do with the border under one particular chain of command. And I'll touch on that very shortly. But being a little bit more specific to the traveller stream, I'll provide a little bit of context just in terms of how we actually view the border. And our position is that we try to manage our risks offshore as much as possible through an intelligence-led, risk-based approach. And we do that in a few ways, and it goes to the heart of the portfolio arrangements that we've got. So first and foremost, for anybody to come to Australia, they need a visa. For many of our visa classes, they're electronically lodged, and a biometric is also taken at the point of visa application. What that does is that we're able to match people's identity, we're able to peg people's identity, but also we're able to start washing information through our systems to be able to identify whether or not there is any particular reason why we would not grant an individual a visa. And sitting behind that is a whole of government intelligence perspective, so that we act not only just from a customs perspective or an immigration perspective, but we act from a whole of government perspective. The second stage is that when anyone checks in an airport overseas, we do an advanced passenger processing check. So for those familiar, it's basically interactive API. And that's checking against a person's visa status and also a secondary check against the systems to see if there's any adverse information that we know about this person that would prevent them getting onto a plane. I think it takes 0.2 of a second for the transaction to actually occur from anywhere overseas back to Australian servers to do the assessment and then to return a particular command: board, do not board. Our third look there is at the primary line. So when somebody arrives at an airport, we've got primary and secondary checks. And then we also, as part of our arrangements, we also do post-border activity as well. So if any adverse information becomes available to us, then we can manage that threat onshore. One of the things that you asked about is some of the challenges that so that's a little bit about us. Some of the challenges that we do experience in terms of sort of managing the border, I don't think would be any surprise to anybody in this room. But I guess I mentioned volumes before, and to put it into perspective, last year Australia processed almost twice our population across our border. So we're about 25 million in terms of population, and we had 46 million crossings of our border. And we're expecting a continued growth. Certainly that will outpace our national population growth. So that percentage is only going to increase. We also have a geographical challenge. It's also a benefit as well, in the sense that we're a small island at the bottom of the world surrounded by water. So we don't have things like land crossings, etc. So anyone that's really coming into Australia is doing so via aircraft or via a cruise ship. It's 37,000 kilometres of border. We've got 60 seaports and we've got 9 major airports. Some of the issues that we're sort of seeing and why we've sort of adopted our posture, and I can just go through them very quickly. We've got returned foreign fighters, we've got counter-terrorism interests, we hold deep at heart community protection, and that is not only things like child protection, but we've got outlaw criminal gangs. We look at it from a policing perspective and also from a perspective of what may actually be disruptive within the Australian community. We also look at the immigration fraud intent, things like people trafficking, and also from a migration perspective as well. Some of our inward challenges that we've got is an integrity challenge, and I must say that things like insider threats is something that we're constantly making sure that we're on top of, not only for ourselves, our own workforce, but those that sort of interact with positions at our ports. We've also got a challenge about trying to get a single picture of an individual, and it really goes to the heart of the seamless traveller, in the sense that if you've got multiple data holdings, when they interact with the border, without having that single picture, it's very hard to make an informed decision as to whether or not you allow them to actually enter your country or not. So getting that single picture, combining a whole of government perspective around that, it sounds easy, but as many of you would know, when you start dealing with systems, it can be quite challenging. We also look at the technology and how it actually is impacting flows of people through our airports. So the advent of larger aircrafts, more people travelling, starts looking at the flow of passengers. And so when we have a look at how we actually manage people across our border from a customs and immigration perspective, we need to be cognisant about what that's actually going to do to our other partners within the airports. So you've got bigger planes, then it means that there's more people at the primary line. You process quicker at the primary line, and it means that you're going to get more backlog at the baggage. You do the baggage quicker, you get more at the taxis trying to leave. So making sure that we work well with all stakeholders at the airport so that we don't actually have a bad impact on other partners. And the other thing that I mentioned is probably keeping things operating. About a month ago, we actually had a systems outage at the airport, and it saw queues up to 5 hours. So, you know, I think being able to have planning around when things go wrong is absolutely critical, and I might touch on that a little bit later. In terms of some of the benefits that we've seen, and I'll finish on this, is that the arrangements that we've got in place actually provides one view of the Australian border. That's not only from a policy perspective, but from a program and an operational perspective as well. And we've got a single voice within government. We have one cabinet minister who represents the views of border agencies to government. We have a full suite of powers to be able to apply to issues as we see them coming across the border. And one really quick example was when we did integrate, I sat down with all of the regional commanders, and I got about 2 minutes into talking to them about migration law, and they said, we're going to stop you there, and we want to ask you, how do we solve the problem of illicit tobacco? And when we thought about that a little bit more, the most effective measure to be able to dissuade people from bringing tobacco across the border from a traveller perspective was using a migration power. We cancelled their visa because they hadn't declared it. So when the students were coming in with a bag full of tobacco to be able to make sure they could live whilst they were in Australia and studying, all of a sudden had to go back and tell their parents why they weren't allowed back in Australia for 3 years because their visa was cancelled. So we can use those leverage points to be able to manage particular threats. We can also have agility in our resources. So for instance, when we did have that airport outage a number of months ago, we were able to swing people from elsewhere within our organisation to come and man the primary line. And so previously we wouldn't have had that manpower to be able to put towards those particular issues. I spoke about systems integration and having a whole of government perspective, and there's some of the benefits that we've realised from that. So we recognise that our model's not for everybody. It works for us, it makes sense, but the point that I'd probably leave you on there is that everything that we've done isn't predicated on being in one organisation. There are ways that you can coordinate and collaborate with other government agencies to be able to achieve the same effect. So I hope that provides a little bit of context, and I'll hand back to you.
Thank you, David, for many, many interesting points. I have a lot of questions, but I'm not going to be asking them all because I want to move to the other speakers. Only one sub-question, if possible. You mentioned already the interactive API PNR. I'm just interested at how many agreements you have with how many countries, and what percentage of the travelers moving across the Australian borders are actually covered by interactive API PNR.
In terms of API PNR, 100% of passengers are going through that particular process. We have a compliance regime that it requires all airlines and cruise ships, to that matter, to be able to do that API check before anybody boards a particular vessel. There is a penalties regime that is associated with that. We've been doing this now for years, and we're an early adopter of that particular technology, and we've got to a level of maturity where we moved it up from 98% of checks to 100% because we had confidence that the airline industry was able to transact on that level. We've also got departure API as well. So we do it both inbound and outbound. In terms of the agreement, we've certainly got one with the EU, and that's where a lot of the actual data is actually held on servers within the European Union. So that's where we get our feed of PNR data from.
Thank you very much. I would like to now move to our colleague from Brazil. And Brazil is using facial recognition technology for passenger control. So it'd be interesting to hear how that actually works and how does the information that is collected feed into the work of customs, and whether you share this information also with other stakeholders at the airports.
Thank you very much, Milena, for the opportunity to be here. It's a great pleasure. In fact, we have right now 14 international airports using the facial recognition technology. So all of our major international airports are using the technology since 2016, in fact. So it's been like 2.5 years, 3 years by now. It's been a great, we have been achieving a great success using it. But in order to, let me just to explain a little bit why we decided to use the technology, I need to go back further. Now it's good. Got it. To 2014, because we were 2013, in fact, because we were preparing for the 2014 World Cup that was going to be hosted in Brazil, and also the 2016 Olympic Games. And that caused a huge impact into our borders, because we have to deal with a huge increase in the amount of travelers to Brazil, and also an increase at the same time in the level of security necessary to process those passengers. At the same time, the staff numbers of the Brazilian customs was predicted to be reduced and not increase it. So the only way out was the use of technology. So that's when we decided to use, to implement, in fact, the API and PNR system, so Advanced Passenger Information System, into our proceedings. And we decided to actually do real-time risk assessment using that data. So 100% of the passengers are manifested to the Brazilian customs. They are all processed through a risk assessment. And, well, pretty much the same as the Australian colleague put it. The difference is we stumble into the problem, how are we going to find those targets among all those passengers arriving to the country with the reducing staffing. So the decision was to use facial recognition because it's seamless. So it's a walk-through solution. Basically, it's 2 cameras in the gate out of the baggage reconciliation room. And the system keeps trying to find the targets that were previously inserted by the risk assessment team for that particular flight. So by the time the system finds a target, a warning is issued to the official of customs officials in charge of that particular gate, that will then stop the passenger and lead that to secondary inspection. If nothing is found, the passenger is released, and the whole process continues. So basically, the use of facial recognition allows us to do a lot more effective inspections, since it made us created the ability to actually find the correct people, the right targets that we want to find upon arrival of the country.
Thank you very much, and maybe we can now move to Falah to tell us a little bit about the work at Dubai Airport, which is one of the busiest airports in the world. So what are Dubai Customs and the UAE doing in terms of innovation at the airport, and how does that work together and complement with the work of other stakeholders that are also introducing innovation and going towards digital transformation, which is a phrase that we hear all the time lately?
Thank you, Milena. First of all, let me thank Azerbaijan Customs and WCO to this opportunity to share our experience and what we learned from different conferences. We are talking about huge conferences like IT and technology. So in Dubai, actually, we, as everybody knows, Dubai having 4 terminals. The capacity of the terminals around 100 million people who's coming through Dubai. And also we accepted the challenge during Expo 2020. So since we was nominate ourselves as to be one of the hosting Expo 2020, we start to build our all capabilities and all infrastructures, and everything was built as per our vision of our government. Coming back to Dubai Airport, first of all, we are working in cooperation with all stakeholders and partners who's working in the airport, and we have one goal actually to achieve. In Dubai government, we have a smart government, which is a body which is taking care of all the smart solutions coming from different government body. So we have to nominate one of our staffs to be part in this team so they can build the whole system of the passenger journey. So this year we worked under umbrella of Dubai Smart Government, and we provide such kind of solution how we can use our capability and resource in such a way so we can increase the flow and make it fast and easier. The main thing is also we are looking for the ideas, the innovations come from the needs actually. So we opened so many channels for the inspectors and staff just to throw the ideas, what they need to build actually. Because they are in the field, you know, they are facing this, all the challenges my colleagues from Australia said, the people is doubling now, the number of passengers triples now. So what we have to do, maybe one of the solutions, increase the number. Maybe it's not possible like Australian custom. We need to reduce it. So we came in the middle. So we used the technology and manpowers and ideas and needs. So we built kind of bridge between this all 4 elements. So we start putting all the innovations and technology to use of the airport. So anything's come up, it's gone under our whole systems. So now we are using technology built on our systems. So I will take especially Dubai Airport. We are using maybe many airports in the world, they are using the BHS systems. The BHS systems for us is a piece of big pictures. So we have fully automated system starting from information which is coming from API, then it goes to the hand carry inspection, then flow through our BHS system where we are doing all the inspections, and then how we do, I'm not talking about the passengers who's moving through the airport seamless without seeing what's happening in the back end. I'm talking about the suspicious bags or suspicious person who has to stop to us. So we come up with the idea why we are not bringing everything to the whole. Instead of sending the passenger from location to location and from place to place, maybe he will spend like 2-3 hours just walking around the airport, and you know, Dubai Airport is one of the biggest airports in the world. So we create a station, one-stop shop. So we're providing all the services to the passenger and also making the nice environment for the inspector to handle the situation. So everything's in there. He can just check the passport and details of the passport, getting all the information. If we have in the system anything related to the bag, any history or data or something, so we can link that to, within we are doing our inspections. So it reduced the time from, we calculated like 30 minutes, so we come to 3 minutes to 4 minutes, the maximum we can do with the passengers. That increased the satisfaction of the passengers. Value add to the airports also, the rank of the Dubai airport. As I remember, the ACA record for Dubai Customs, it's 4.5/5, which is a good record. We reached a number, the passenger is feeling there is no any operation going on. Today, I was in the booth, in our booth, so one of the questions came, one of the guy, he came and asked me the question. He said, in Dubai, there is a customer actually? I said, yes. He said, because last week I was in there, so I didn't saw that thing. So this is, I told them, we have the back end. So we need to happy passenger traveling through Dubai Customs, but still we have the power to control everything. And we have a number of Caesar, which is reached to around 1,600 Caesar, which is done during the last year, which is huge. We are talking about the drugs and narcotics and so many things. So this is about the way it is.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and we see a pattern here. Yeah. It's I guess, the Expo 2020 that is putting pressure. But who was? Can you just give us who was actually the driver in the process of getting to that stage and developing the kiosk? So who is, I would say, the leader in this project?
Our objectives to be a leader in the region, in the customs, in the worldwide. So this is one of the drivers, and whole system in Dubai, it's like pushing us and forcing us to go and be a number one in that region. So this is which we are working for, and we hope to get that soon.
Okay. Thank you very much. I would like to now ask a question to Tim, and I've already mentioned in my introductory remarks how, after 2006, the number of scanners at airports have increased tremendously. Do you see from that point on, comparing to today, how things have progressed in that respect, and how that is contributing, and the scanners and non-intrusive inspection altogether is contributing to the work of customs at the airports?
So, Milena, thank you. And I want to echo my colleagues regarding such a wonderful event, being able to speak here. Thank you to Azerbaijan Customs and, of course, WCO. You know, we know, because we've worked together at the WCO, I know how much work the team has to go through in the background to make all of this come together. We don't see more than 1/10 of the effort that goes in. We just enjoy all the spoils of all the hard work. So for everybody from Azerbaijan Customs and WCO team, I know how much work you go through, and we all thank you. So to your question, interestingly enough, so from 2006, the events, if you go back, Lockerbie, if you think about 9/11, if you think about then in 2006, we had underwear, we had shoe, we had every different conceivable way where a bad human wanted to get something bad on an airplane to harm others. As we've progressed, first we introduced scanning devices to mitigate that. I mean, I don't want to talk too much about this topic, but when I first started using airplanes, Mom and Dad could walk me right up to the gate. A guard was, go on through, you got a ticket, there you go. That was where I started my experience. And so fast forward all the way through the adoption of scanning devices, then the adoption of standards and policy, Standard 2, Standard 3, how the BHS and hold baggage systems have advanced because of passenger capacity, of security policies. It's been an enormous transformation for an airport, because they've had to invest so much in technology just to keep up with the trends of what bad humans have been invoking and driving the agenda. So when you go from that period to today, the major transformation we see now is very interesting, and you see people talking about this, but there's a real key element now. It's a very point of confliction where security is quite good, because all the efforts and all the investments into airports, investments into customs administrations, everything from a migration perspective, all the investments that all the parties involved have made. And now it's quite safe. Always can be better. Every day there's a challenge. Every day smart people work together to try to solve the problem of what the less nice people want to do to cause harm on airplanes and to passengers. But now it pivots, because with this explosive growth of passenger movement and use of airlines, think of all the airlines that have just bloomed out of nowhere, that weren't here 5 years ago. It's unbelievable. You look at the colors of airplanes at airports now, Every day it seems like there's a new one with a flower or some kind of butterfly or some kind of bright color. We never had this before. But the key element now is the passenger experience combined with the ability to keep them safe, because we have so many more passengers than we used to have. We still want the level of safety, so policy and customs administrations and all the other policy and enforcement agencies that have to be involved are still in play at a very high level today. But now there's the challenge of getting us and mom and dad from point A to point B with as least effect of this major overhaul to safety and security as they can possibly do so. Dubai is a great example. I come from the US, it's the polar opposite of what I experience in my home country. In my home country, it's a security operation with a few fast food restaurants. When I go to Dubai, it's an amazing experience with a few runways. It's completely opposite, but the security should be no less or no different for my safety to get on an airplane at any of those locations. So technology has to rapidly move forward in order to keep pace with this. So think what's the number one complaint when you go stand in an airport, especially in the US, because my fellow countrymen, they're great at complaining about checkpoints. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I got to take my shoes off. I can't believe I got to take this out of my bag. They won't let me take these 12 bottles of perfume and hair conditioner that I want to bring on my spring break trip. And I've got them all laid out for everybody to see as I try to go through. The passenger experience while maintaining safety is the next generation of technology motivation from my perspective and my company's perspective, because we're one of the global leaders in delivering hardware or capability and technology to secure the airports. So I think that the next generation of change and what we'll start to see next, maintaining the level of security that's required, that the standard we've achieved today, most of us came here by airplane, we all think it's pretty safe, but now I want to go through the airport and I want to feel less I want to be less affected by the security process that I go through, but I don't want less security. So that's the change that we'll start to see going forward, and technology and policy will drive that.
Thank you so much, Tim, and for this very interesting observations. And I would like to now move to Vladimir from IOM, and I would like to ask you, like, today we have these issues with migration. They're growing. We've seen them a lot in the last years. How do you see the cooperation between customs, immigration, the IOM offices on the ground? How does that work today? How can that be improved for the future? And are there any mechanisms and automation solutions in place for that?
Thank you very much, Milena, distinguished speakers and guests. It's a real pleasure to participate to this conference. I will try to speak from the experience of IOM Azerbaijan, which I think many other countries might have with a similar experience. We are all witnessing that we are on the verge of a new era here, specifically in Azerbaijan. I mean, we know that in the past the economy was driven by the natural resources, oil, gas, but things are changing. The economy is changing. We have seen that there is a more range of new products and services that are available within Azerbaijan, more larger people of movement, people moving in, people moving out for their own reasons. IOM, together with the government of Azerbaijan and together with the experts, work in a collaborative manner, in terms of like a partnership manner, to help and assist in creating a better system that will address the current and future realities when it comes to the travel and when it comes to the movement of people and of course together with the goods. We are all aware that sometimes those changes and improvements in technology are really connected to security concerns. Sometimes there are some criminal activities potential that can bring that movement of people, and basically we are here working together with Azerbaijani government institutions to make sure that we develop a proper border management system that will actually increase both the legislative, operational, and the policy levels. We are seeing that many governments actually they are dealing with the migration. I mean, we have seen from open migration policy to a bit more regulative way of how migration is done. Nevertheless, I think since Azerbaijan as a country has a well-educated population, but also there are also growing needs in Azerbaijan. I think we see that there is a good economic conjecture with these potentials, and we look forward that migration will actually contribute to development of the country, and somehow this development will also be in connection with the SDGs. So basically, we continue to assist the government of Azerbaijan. I will mention a few points here. Basically, it's interinstitutional cooperation that bring together different services like border and migration agencies. And we bring them together on trainings, workshops, we share the materials, we are together creating systems that actually will help them to manage the borders in the right manner. There is a working group that contributes to this, where this working group discusses, as I said, legislation, policies, operational, and any other emerging issues that are connected to the national and international developments in field of migration. And all of this, it is captured within the international standards. I think we are all aware of International Civil Aviation Organization standards, all these recommendations, the advanced passenger information system that is out there to help to better monitor the flow of the people and the goods. So, in addition, I think these changes that we work together with the government actually also helps to put Azerbaijan at the same level of standards as any other EU country, which is, I think, very important and encouraging development. And I think we work all together to try to achieve that goal, to make it sure that those standards are met. So, in terms of cooperation, in addition to these services, we also cooperate with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as I mentioned, State Migration Service, ASAN. And I think it's very important that we develop proper procedures in place that actually will work both ways for foreigners coming into Azerbaijan, but also for the Azerbaijani going outside to different countries. We are working together, and I think we are very happy with all the collaboration that we have with the government, but also with our donor and the technical experts that we are providing. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Vladimir. Maybe we can now move to the next round of questions, which will address and look into some smart solutions. Maybe we can start off with David. If you can tell us a little bit more about the two initiatives that you've been involved in, like the Smart Gates and Biometrics Identification Service. So, how can you explain a little bit about that?
So I guess, and I mentioned it before, that identity is absolutely key in terms of being able to manage your border effectively, and two mechanisms that we've got in place to help us establish someone's identity and to be able to manage it through the continuum is the biometrics capture that we have, and then the smart gates for transacting at the border. We were an early adopter of smart gate technology for arrivals. We started a pilot in 2002 and implemented in 2007. So it wasn't an overnight journey for us to go from pilot to implementation, but certainly we've been doing that since 2007. Where we are now, we've got both arrival and departure smart gates. On departure, for example, we've actually got 92 gates in our 9 major airports, and we transact with about 80% of all outbound passengers through those particular gates. So that's something which has come about in the last few years and has really helped us be able to manage our workflow and our resource allocation within the border, but also to be able to manage some of the risk possibly leaving the country. So when we talk about foreign terrorist fighters, when we talk about even things like, for instance, having a departure protection order around child safety, so we can manage that through the outbound smart gates that we've got. So more recently, we have committed to what we call the Seamless Traveller program in Australia. And really it's about upgrading the existing hardware and related software that sort of sits behind the smart gate process that we have. And really what we're trying to achieve there is that all eligible passport holders will be able to self-manage through that process. And for those that present low or no risk, we'll have a seamless transition through the border where we can focus some of those resources on some of those higher risks. And very much we see it as a security and as an efficiency mechanism. In terms of the arrival smart gate, as I sort of said, we're looking at modernising it. It's because we're actually coming to the end of its useful life. So I guess what does the future state look like in terms of our smart gates? So the new cameras or the new gates that we're trialling at the moment, they actually have 3 cameras. So we've got a long range camera, a medium range camera and a short range camera. And really what we're sort of trying to embark on there is trying to utilise that face on the move technology from the long and medium range cameras so that when somebody does actually present through the gate, that we've already established who their identity is and they'll be able to move through in a contactless situation where they don't have to actually present a passport to be able to go through the gate. And we do that, we're able to do that relatively quickly on the basis that because we've done the advanced passenger processing either inbound or outbound, it actually preloads that into the gates, so we know actually who's coming. So rather than sort of having to ping against the database holding everybody's information, we know the subset of people that are actually transacting with the border within a particular period, so there's an efficiency dividend there. It is in the trial stage. We're finding that we're hitting about 60% of passengers as they're going through that new gate, and that's not taking into account that we haven't fully tested that long and medium range capability. So there are a few little technical issues that we're trying to overcome at the moment. We've got to try and calibrate our biometrics a little bit more effectively. But the point there is that we would have loved to have rolled this out already, but we need to get those settings right because we don't want to solve one problem and create possibly other problems as well. Just in terms of as part of the Seamless Traveller, we're also sort of investing in what we call the back of hall technology as well. And it's again looking at that face on the move technology so that it's kind of our last chance to be able to deal with somebody within a customs controlled area where we have a range of different powers once they leave in that particular zone. Once they leave that zone, our powers change. So it's sort of our catch-all in the sense that if we haven't been able to identify the issues up to that particular time, that we can then get them in the back of the hall. I think, and yeah, as I say, last chance there. In terms of sort of the biometrics piece, we are going through an enterprise biometrics identification service. We're developing this. It is looking to replace, again, technology which is coming to the end of its useful life, and really what that is about how we enrol people, how we verify their identity, how we can search and transact with that particular information. We do matching, record retrieving, and then also watch list management. So ultimately where we want to go with that is to be able to have a biometric watch list, so that it's a little bit more sophisticated than looking at some of the other data sets that we're currently using. We're a little way off, but we have instigated that process to be able to try and advance our capability in the biometrics field. And probably just more generally, we are just trying to automate as much as we possibly can. I mentioned before that we're sort of bringing together a range of systems from a whole of government perspective to get that single person view. So as part of our sort of ongoing work with our systems, we are trying to sort of link those up as best as we can to be able to get that single particular perspective, and then start using some of the technology that we've heard about over the last few days in terms of sort of the machine learning, cloud computing, the automation, based on a really solid, sound whole of government data set. So there are a few of the things that we've got in the pipeline. Some of them are a little bit more tangible than others at this particular point in time, but yeah.
Yeah, something like developing a one single truth for the passengers traveling through airports. Very interesting initiatives. Thank you for that, David. Felipe can tell us maybe a little bit more about the initiatives that you have in place, the smart initiatives and the exchange of information that you've put in place with other customs administrations when it comes to exchange of information between airports.
Sure, thank you for the question, Milena. We have right now a pilot running with the French Customs Administration regarding the exchange of information of passengers or suspect passengers. What happens is that we came up to the conclusion that we were gathering a lot of intel information doing our inspections, and also operational information that I would deem quite helpful to other customs administration in fulfilling their jobs. For instance, we have a total digital customs currency declaration, and if I have a passenger declaring a certain amount of money, $100,000, and leaving to France or Dubai or even Australia, I'm pretty sure that those customs administration would love to know that, so they can prepare themselves upon arrival. And that's exactly what we're doing. So we develop a data pipeline to partner customs administrations to inform real-time any kind of information, in fact, intel information, currency declarations. For instance, I think it's no secret, Brazil has this big problem with cocaine smuggling, right? In fact, Brazil doesn't produce 1 single gram of cocaine in its territory because the climate conditions for growing the plant that cocaine is obtained from, it's not found in Brazil, so it's actually coming from the land borders. So opposite from Australia, we do have like all land borders with all South American countries, so it's a big problem. So cocaine gets smuggled through the land borders, and it flows through the ports and airports. In terms of passengers, usually the ones carrying the drugs out of the country are not Brazilians. They fly into Brazil, and they actually are stopped upon arrival by customs because they do fulfill the profiling. But they actually have nothing because they came to pick up the drugs to take it. But we know because when you open the bags, they carry no cash, they don't know where they're going to stay, they don't know how much they pay for their fare. They're bringing their own food. They're going to stay for like 2 or 3 days. I mean, the story is not consistent. So what I do is that I flag that specific passenger, And usually I have no manpower to stop them upon departure of the country because all the efforts are focused, as most countries are, upon arrival, right? So, but I do have that piece of information, that piece of intel, that it's not contained on the data set of API PNR. I mean, because I have actually stopped the passenger, interviewed them, opened the luggage. So why not to share that piece of intel on ad hoc, on suspect passengers? And that's actually what I do, because when that specific person departures from the country and it's going to France specifically on that case, an instant message is sent to the French Customs Administration, to their risk assessment center, so they can do whatever they deem it's necessary with the whole history, all biometric, all biographic information that I have upon that passenger. So this is in a pilot phase, but it's we have pretty much good results with that.
Maybe you
So
can share some examples.
Yeah, we are sending a lot of data that, especially from currency declarations. So people have the tendency to forget to declare currency when they arrive in the country. So a lot of seizures, a lot of taxation regarding that, fines regarding that. For drugs as well, many cases. And especially we receive from France a lot of information regarding tax-free, believe it or not, because usually people go to France to buy high-end goods, and in Europe they have this system of tax-free, so they have to go to customs and to present that invoice, and they get their money back, and sometimes they actually do forget to declare that to the Brazilian customs, which are those goods are durable. But I do receive that information from the French customs, and then we are right there and we have the proof that they actually purchased that, and that I think costs an X amount of euros. So that like last week we have like 3 or 4 cases of 1 million euros of watches and jewelry undeclared that I actually got the information from the French customs. So that's just a good example.
Interesting examples. And we already touched upon the advanced passenger information and passenger name record, and I would like to ask Falah if you could tell us a little bit more about your experience in using the API PNR and how that has maybe changed throughout the past years.
Yeah, good. But let me add on passenger declaration. It's interesting things because in Dubai we are working on an app called I Declare. So the I Declare, it will be going to provided by I think on September or maybe a little bit earlier. Now it's in testing stages where the passenger, he can declare whatever he wants. And there is so many options available in that app. He can chat with the customs administration directly if he don't want, like in case in Brazil, if I'm traveling from country to country, but I don't know what the country allowed or not allowed. So just I can send the mail or just a live chat. So I ask them exactly what the rules and procedures and that particular items. So that one, it will be reduce the time and my time also when they came to the airport and we have to stop that and hold it under our custody, then it's a procedure. So we are trying to reduce that, all the things. Coming back to your question, as everybody knows now, the technology is available. Now, how to use the technology, this is the question now. The advanced information for the passenger, it's one technology available. So we have to use it. Use it in certain way to provide enough information, which is available, and use it for faith of passengers, because in the end of the day, we are stopping the bad and releasing the good person. So the bad one, he knows I'm doing something wrong, so I have to stay and wait till the procedure is over. But the normal passenger, he have to walk through the airport very fast, and he don't have to wait for the queue or facing all the obstacles. So we are using it, and we are sharing with all the countries, and it actually well maintained, and we have very trained and mature staffs who's working on that piece of information. We are looking for the passenger names and flight, coming from where, what details and specific information we needed. So it will be available in the front line whenever the passenger is arrived to the airport. So everything will be easy and available to use it.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So I would also like to now turn to Vladimir and to ask how do you see technologies and technological advancements as an opportunity in respect of the cooperation that we already talked about in the previous round of questions?
Thank you, Milena. So, well, the technology, it's basically usually the end product of certain legislations and policies that are actually defining what are the needs. And this is actually where we are a bit strong as an IOM. We work together with the government and, as I said, we bring experts basically to make an assessment. And I will just briefly talk about the assessment that was done based on the related legislation with the comparison actually between the EU customs legislation versus the Azerbaijan customs legislation. And basically during this review that was done together with the institutions here, it was discovered that there are some discrepancies, specifically, for example, in terms of penalties, appeals, risk management, fees, origin, valuations. These are debts, guarantees, customs control. These are all sort of important aspects that were sort of missing in the Azerbaijan customs code, but are part of the European Union customs code. And actually, these are actually the basis now that we are going to work together with the institutions of Azerbaijan to create systems and support the technologies that will cover these discrepancies. In terms of what IOM also do in supporting these activities, we have our unit, the Integrated Border Management Unit. It's helping us to bring all these experts and make sure that all the issues are properly addressed and come up with the right recommendation what technology actually should be used once this legislation is in place. Nevertheless, when we talk about the passengers, I think what we're going to see next in Azerbaijan is actually implementation of APR PNR system. That's what we go forward.
Thank you very much, Vladimir. And last but not least, I would like to ask Tim, and in the preparations for this roundtable, you expressed one of your visions for the future and how to leverage on all the information that is being collected at the airports from different sources. So would you like to share this vision for the future with us?
Yes, and some advice. You have to be careful to make sure that we have enough time, because I'll talk about this all day. So key to this, if you go to the airport level, so we know that the HBS side, we're already capturing passenger baggage information and tying it to the PNR data as part of the whole check-in process. So I've arrived at the airport, I've checked in 24 hours in advance, so I've given advance notice. And then I arrive to the airport, I've checked in, my bag goes down through the HBS system, it is going to go through its mandatory inspection through an EDS machine and now CT machines. And its primary function is to look for explosives, lithium-ion batteries, anything that can harm the plane and the passengers. That's the number one goal. So that process is in place today. Some airports are quite advanced versus others, but everybody is doing a really good job, hence the safety record that we have in place at the moment. Now you go to the checkpoint, and the checkpoint is going through a major transformation because it's very intrusive in many airports today. Shoes off, body scans, pat-downs, wands, swabs, stuff through x-ray machines. It can be quite a slow queue, and it's gotten better. Countries are using Trusted Traveler and other risk-associated or pre-assessed capability to speed the process up a bit, but it's not where it's intended to be. Then comes the addition of CT capability at the checkpoint. And why CT at the checkpoint? Well, now you get to leave your shampoos and your laptops and all your other elements that you hate taking out of your bag. They get to stay in the bag. So if you've gone through Schiphol, if you've gone through certain locations at Heathrow and other airports around the world, and you see a very interesting modern-looking machine, and when you walk up to it and you're ready to disrobe, take all the stuff out of your bag, and they say, no, put your backpack in the bin, make sure you don't have anything in your pockets, walk through the machine, your bag goes through, and you go, wow, that was pretty cool. That happened very quick. I like that. Whatever just happened to me, I like that. Now we get passengers through the checkpoint much faster. They get to spend more time in Falah's airports areas and all the shops and everything that they get to spend time and money in. And this is great, because what have we done? We've enhanced the experience, improved the experience, and we've maintained a higher level of fidelity in the security process. Now, go to the next level above that. So imagine this scenario, and this is what we're working on today for tomorrow. Imagine a major airport in Europe with a direct flight destination into a major airport in the United States. So use those as an example. So 350 passengers on board, 4 direct flights a day, 275 bags have been scanned for explosives and made themselves onto the plane. Plane is en route for an 8-hour flight. While the plane is in flight, data from those scanned image files from each bag can be put up into a system read with AI, with trained AI. And what is it looking for? Customs administrations are expecting something completely different than what the aviation security officials were looking for when they first scanned the bag. But now there's a data source for each bag on each of those flights. Now we can write it once, create it once, and use it and share other information. So the image file goes up, cognitive services reads the image, it's trained to look for apples or fruit or currency or other elements that are important to a customs administration. The customs officer who's got the lead on that flight pulls up on his screen or her screen and sees 275 bags have made it on, they've all been scanned, these 12 look like they might have an anomaly for food. We'll welcome them into the United States. They simply get a secondary screen, but those who didn't have anything in their bags that was not supposed to be in there, they're welcomed off to the green pathway. Please enjoy your visit to this airport and go on to your domestic flight. Who wins in that scenario? The airport operations, the customs administration's operations, the airlines operations, and in that scenario, that's your next level of capability and ConOps that is going to improve the passenger experience even further, whether it be from Gatwick to Dubai, whether it be from Sydney to Los Angeles, whether it be from Heathrow to Dallas-Fort Worth. You can rinse and repeat this all around the world, and it's quite scalable. There's data being captured by high-fidelity X-ray machines, ours and others, and it's being repurposed and used by a multitude of agencies and entities that can plan for the arrival and the welcoming in of those passengers and improve their experience while even elevating up even further the level of fidelity in the security process. This is the process flow of the future, and it requires data, it requires AI, it requires some blockchain, it requires a host of things that have been talked about across these past few days. All of those mixed together should be able to deliver that capability, and that's your next level of technology that should solve the next level of problems for the airports as they welcome in IATA's advice regarding such an increased number of passengers by 2030.
Very interesting vision for the future, and I think the work that is ongoing in the WCO Technical Experts Group on NII and developing the unified file format is one step towards that vision for the future. But I really liked the point about having more time for shopping, so I think I would be looking forward to that for sure. And I want also to add one more piece of information which I found when researching for this round table, that actually it is estimated that about 34% of the airports around the world will by 2021 already be working on some sort of introduction of blockchain technology. So that might feed into that. So we've come to a point where we've finalized the 2 rounds of questions, and I hope you're all very enthusiastic and cannot wait to ask for a question to one of our speakers or all of our speakers. Can I see any hands in the air? Again, I'm going to be doing this. Yes. We see someone here. If you can bring the, yes, we have the microphone from there. It's not working. Maybe while you fix it, we actually have had, we've used the technology here and the app to receive some questions, or one question, which is from Abdullah Alassi from the Federal Customs Authority, who was asking with 5G network how this will change the airport operation. Is anyone willing to take on that question? Tim.
So 5G will absolutely enable airports to do a couple of things that are very much required as they adopt the newest technology. What ends up happening is that there is so much data now to process, and nobody wants to wait for an outcome. 5G will do a couple of things. Number one, scanned image files are significant in size. So it needs a very strong pipe to move this information at pace, because the last thing a customs official wants is to wait and not be able to make a determination while the flight is in the air. So if they're going to, if the system is going to add large amounts of data into the process flow, it's going to require larger pipes, faster pipes, and I can tell you, blockchain, movement of heavy blockchain, effective use of AI and machine learning are at pace with the growth of passengers. 5G is going to have to play a major role in enabling this whole process to work. Because imagine this, let's say that AI is the Ferrari. I'll just use that as an example, and it's in the garage with no tires. The tires are still at 3G. The car is at 5G level of demand, but I can't use it at 5G performance because I don't have that capability. So 5G is one of the key foundation points that has to come into play if we're all going to use this technology that we've been talking about over the last couple of days.
Absolutely. And now we turn to one of our delegates. If you can present yourself to the...
Yes, I hope the audio is on. Oh, yeah, it's good. Good afternoon. Wil van Eenswijk, European Commission, DG TaxSuit. I have a question for Felipe. Very interesting what you thought, the cooperation you have between Brazil and France, where operational information is exchanged on identified riskful passengers, either when they are departing from your country towards France, and on the other side, people who have reclaimed VAT and other issues who are arriving in your country and are not that very much willing to declare the goods they have purchased in France. Also within the European Union, we are struggling with countries that it's difficult for them to exchange this kind of information. So maybe you can, and I understand that this is a pilot project, but maybe you can give a bit of an insight what hurdles you had to take in order to allow these two countries to exchange this type of information.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, We know that in terms of exchanging personal data, EU countries are always very sensitive, especially, for instance, you take PNR, and it's very much because of the sensitivity regarding that, EU doesn't allow countries without an international agreement to have access to PNR. Without access to PNR, us on the other side, Brazil doesn't have access to PNR from European-based airlines, which are 60–70% of the air traffic flow between Brazil and Europe. Without that, I cannot do risk assessment on departure passengers, even if I have the manpower to actually deal with that. Because PNR is the one that it's sent from the airlines to customs with actual advance, 3 days in advance, 2 days in advance of the departure, 1 day before the departure. And API is actually sent after the plane has taken off. So it's really useful when I'm receiving a flight because I have 9 hours from departure. But it doesn't worth anything if I'm trying to do a departure risk assessment because the passenger has already departed. So that's the whole point. So I really obeying the EU regulation, I cannot receive PNR. So, but I still have a problem of drug smuggling through Europe. So what do? I cannot stop that passenger, but I do have the information. So I just send that very much information that France already has, which is basically passenger name, passport, etc., added to a piece of intel information, which is basically free tests and maybe some pictures. So I'm not actually adding anything besides intel to the piece of information they do already have. So I'm actually helping them to do a risk assessment on that. So that doesn't break any EU regulations as far as I was informed, So it was a little bit a way around the impossibility of actually getting data to actually do a risk assessment upon departure. That's it. Hope I answered the question. Okay.
Do we have any other questions? Yes, we do. Okay. It's in French, I think. We need earphone.
Je vous remercie, Milena. Je voudrais également remercier l'ensemble des panélistes pour la clarté et la concision donc, des interventions. Moi, je voudrais intervenir dans un premier plan pour faire une petite contribution et dans un second plan poser une question. La contribution sera brève parce que je crois que comme on parle d'aéroports intelligents, il faudrait quand même que la technologie nous aide à mettre le voyageur dans une aisance psychologique. Parce que quand le voyageur quitte sa maison pour aller à l'aéroport et voyager, il ne faut pas qu'il soit dans un état de stress. Donc, aujourd'hui, est-ce qu'il ne faudrait pas envisager un aéroport de demain qui puisse permettre aux voyageurs, une fois arrivés, le contrôle fait une fois, qu'ils soient tout à fait à l'aise pour pouvoir se mouvoir dans l'aéroport sans difficulté majeure. Parce que faire plusieurs types de contrôles alors qu'on est en transit, ça peut poser d'énormes difficultés. Ça, c'est vraiment la contribution. Maintenant, la question, nous nous sommes trop focalisés sur le voyageur. Mais je crois qu'également la technologie doit donner une réponse par rapport au personnel de sol. Parce que également, ça peut être un vecteur de risque, le personnel de sol. Quel contrôle technologique faudra mettre en œuvre pour que le personnel de sol soit pris en charge dans le contrôle de l'aéroport? Parce que la menace peut venir de ce côté-là. Or, dans le panel, je n'ai fait qu'observer et on n'a parlé que du voyageur et le personnel de sol. Est-ce que la technologie a prévu quelque chose pour véritablement encadrer le personnel de sol? Parce qu'un danger peut provenir de ce point de vue. Je vous remercie.
So who would like to try and address this question? David?
Thank you, and yes, it's a good question, and I mentioned it earlier on just in terms of insider threats. So anyone that does have access to restricted zones, in Australia's example, are required to be accredited to be able to enter those particular areas. When they're, as part of their accreditation, they go through a range of checks, be it through criminal history checks or other more broader security checks. So we establish whether or not there's any particular risks associated with those individuals being within those zones. We then control those zones through a range of mechanisms. So people have to swipe to get into secure zones, so we know who's actually entering and leaving them. We have CCTV controls as well. And all of our staff are also trained in terms of being able to look for things that are out of the ordinary. So an example may be, and it's probably on the possible lower end of some of the risk, but you see people that have got access into a customs control zone going and seeing their family member off at the boarding gate. So that is not allowed under our particular system, and whilst they may not necessarily be doing any nefarious, they are indeed breaking their obligations there, and it could be an indicator to other behaviour that they might be willing to engage in, which runs contrary to their particular requirements. So, you know, I guess have your zones, monitor them well, train your people, and make sure your people are accredited and trained so that they know what the expectations are around that. I suppose lastly, have a regime to be able to address that behaviour if it does actually appear.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions? There is one over there. Can someone bring the microphone over there? If you can only first present yourself. Thank you.
My name is Henk Mulder from the International Air Transport Association. I want to go back to the statistics you quoted in the very beginning, that within 15 years the number of passengers will double, at least that's the forecast. Well, that actually means that airplanes will have to turn around twice as fast, because we also know there won't be twice as many airports. It takes 20 years to build an airport, so we know very precisely that the flows will double. This isn't only a customs problem, obviously. How closely are you working together with the other stakeholders, the airports, the airlines, the ground handlers, and anyone else, to not double the number of passengers hanging around in an airport and trying to get them through twice as quick as we normally do? Do any of you have these sort of collaborations?
Maybe Felipe, you would like to say something around that?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, we are collaborating national level in the national, it's called the National Airport Authorities Commission, which is was basically created to deal with that during the World Cup and the Olympic Games in Brazil, because well, we expanded some airports, but that wasn't enough to deal with the demand. So we have to put the passengers through the process with higher security and much faster. And there's no other way to deal with that other than talking to all the stakeholders in that particular airport. So you make sure, because it's a flow, right? If you have a bottleneck, everything is lost. So in our cases, since you asked about customs, this whole facial recognition and risk analysis, et cetera, I just mentioned, is just part of that. So to be able to do way more, that's our problem, but with less people and much faster. So seamless travel, and I get the same question that my colleague from Dubai, sometimes foreigners fly to Brazil and say, do you even have a customs? And yes, the answer is yes, and we are there, and we are actually inspecting 100% of the people, the biographic data, and also taking the biometrics without even they realizing. As a matter of fact, we have increased more than 300% the effectiveness ratio from before using risk assessment facial recognition, from when you compare before and after using the technology. So from our customs point of view, I think that's a very important part. So we have this big queues that you mentioned when you have the system flow in the past, and that causes burdens because I have to check or start questioning passengers or check passports, et cetera, et cetera. and I do know that there are still many countries that actually do that. So for me, there's no point. You have a API PNR system, you have a risk assessment, but you do have to stop all the passengers in order to find the targets that you are looking for. So that creates bottlenecks either in the fingers of the aircraft or on the baggage reconciliation rooms. And our way to deal with that was to use facial recognition to find the targets.
If I can just follow up with a little question. I mean, what you're talking about is a sort of, it's a form of coordinated border management, if we can call it that way. And it's always a certain, I would say, issue as to who is going to lead that process. And what is the case in Brazil? Who is leading specifically in the airport, for example?
In fact, there was a special agency that was created to actually lead that under the authority of the presidency, because you have to deal with so many different agencies that if you don't have that under the same authority, it's very hard. Australia dealt with that, creating a department, right? So we created a special agency under the authority of the presidency to get them all together in the same room. And here we have this problem, and we have to solve it. Here's the budget. We only can get out of the room with that solved. So that's the way we dealt with that. It's very good. It went very nice.
Interesting. I don't see any more hands up. I would like to use this now opportunity to give each of the speakers just one short minute to give some takeaway messages that you would like to share with the audience. So maybe we can start from you and move up to Vladimir.
No, I'd just like to thank you again, Milena. And as Timothy Norton very well said, I can only imagine the trouble that it is to organize all that. And also I'd like to thank the Azerbaijan customers. Yes, just after. The Azerbaijan customs for the warm hospitality. And I think that for me the most important part of the discussions here was that to hear different point of views. Very interesting setting that you managed to place here. But actually we have touched upon several practical issues, in fact, of things that are actually going on, either in the immigration point of view, either in the industry point of view, for technology, and from the customs point of view. So it was very practical and very interesting to participate. Thank you again.
Thank you. Falah?
Thank you again for WCO and Azerbaijan Custom, and from my side I wish, because we are working on new technologies and everything, and we have to think about our staffs, how to take them to the new technology, or shift them to the future from now. So I think we have to make a balance between human resource and the technology, and they have to work together. And just to conclude this, I think we have to work all authorities or partners together to achieve that, what we aim to, our happiness of our passengers.
So cooperation. Thank you. David?
Thank you. Look, to achieve seamless travel experience, there's a lot of elements that would play into this, but I'll probably try and just harness in on one, and it's about using technology to try and manage your risk upstream as much as possible. What this does is it creates the effect of giving your people the maximum amount of time to be able to wrap a response around potential issues. So to do this, I guess you need to have your security settings right. And I see that we've spoken about the balance between facilitation and security. I actually don't see them mutually exclusive. You get your security settings right, you manage it upstream, facilitation will flow, and I'm sure people have different views on that. But a couple of things to be able to manage your risk upstream. You need to have your integrated systems from a whole of government perspective as much as possible, so you've got that single source of truth. You need to invest the right amount within your systems and your people to be able to sort of like utilise those systems to the greatest extent possible, and you can't just outsource that. Like outsource, you can certainly do that to a certain extent, but you need to invest your own resource into that particular process. And you need to work with others in terms of being able to achieve this. It's not something that you can do alone. You've got to work with across government, You need to work with industry, you need to work with the private sector, and you need to work with international partners to be able to achieve that seamless effect. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
So, Milena, thank you very much for having us on this panel. Thank my distinguished colleagues here that have joined us up here. It's been, I think, a very important, a great topic to introduce into the future ITTI events, because it is, in fact, I think we've missed a play here in terms of talking about customs' role in elements outside of the traditional container side, and we still have yet to talk about air cargo and the net effect of e-commerce, but maybe another topic for another time.
There you go.
If I can, I'd like to leave with this thought for everybody to take away, and that is, the tech is still just the tech. If you aren't ready to transform your business in order to harness the power of the tech will sit on a shelf and it'll go stale, and you will not scale and improve. So when we go through these couple of days and we talk about all kinds of exciting things that are coming into the digital forefront, it's still a matter of business transformation if you're going to harness the power of it and use it in your everyday life. And so I think it's important that we focus on this as a transformation and not just talk about the tech. And I think with that in mind, folks will harness more power out of their effort into this. So thank you.
Thank you, Tim. And finally, Vladimir.
Yes, thank you very much. I would just like to conclude with a few words about talking about partnership. I think this is an excellent event, actually, that I'm witnessing here, and I'm really pleased to be part of this panel speakers here. This is actually the real thing, how we connect the private sector together with the organizations who are setting the standards, together with the government institutions. I think that is the very important factor that I really appreciate, and I think it's appreciated by everyone here in the audience and here at the panel. And I just like to use this opportunity to thank very much to the government of Azerbaijan, and actually to congratulate for all their efforts that they are taking to try to achieve those certain standards and show that they can work together with other international standards. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vladimir, and I'm glad that we finished off on a note of cooperation and collaboration. I think that's a good final message. I would like to thank all the speakers for their excellent contributions and commitment to making this roundtable successful. I would first like to ask you to stay in your seats while Saida joins us, and to invite everyone to join me in a welcome of applause. So, thank you so much.
I also thank dear Milena and Budimirovic and all the speakers for this interesting session. And also I should say that all of you, all our guests are invited to dinner tonight, which will be at Birga Beach Hotel, sponsored by the Korea Customs Service. And so you can look casual smart, and it will begin at 19 o'clock. The buses will take you from here after this session, and we will be letting you back at 22 and 30. And what about our city tour? I should say that tomorrow, if you want to go to our city tour at 15 o'clock, buses will take you from here, from Heydar Aliyev Center to the Boulevard Hotel in order to change your clothes and to have some quick lunch. And after this, at 16 o'clock from Boulevard Hotel, you will be taken to the city tour. So, and I should to say, so that's all, I think. So thank you very much. I wish a lovely dinner to everyone. Enjoy your time and see you tomorrow. By the way, I will be waiting for you tomorrow back in this room at 9:30. And actually, I ask you to be punctual because we will have a very interesting session and speeches from the Secretary General of the City Secretariat, Smiths Detection, and the Paralympic Judo champion. So that's all. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow.